everyone. With Shadowlands having us deal with a whole bunch of undeath, afterlife, and of course the Lich King, one's mind wanders back to the days of Wrath the Lich King, where Tirion Fordring played a prominent role in the salvation of the worlds. This mighty paladin was one of the first to join the Order of the Silver Hand, way back during the Horde's first invasion of Azeroth. By this time, Stormwind had fallen. Its survivors had fled to the lands of Lordaeron, where Anduin Lothar, together with others, they rallied the nations to band together and form the Alliance of Lordaeron to stand against this alien threat, fight for the very sake of the world. Having Lordaeron unite, it was great and all, but some of them were rivals of each other. Some of them were not instantly bonding with each other and fighting together. Lothar, he needed champions for every human to rally behind, no matter where they came from. At first, he thought of the clerics, a most obvious choice to fill the role, but they hadn't done so well during the war so far. Brave to be certain, but they lacked the martial training, better suited to use their holy light to mend the wounds off the battlefield. He needed something else, something that he could take with him in the midst of battle, and the answer, that came from Archbishop Alonsus Val and the Church of the Holy Light. Val proposed to form a new order, one that would represent the best qualities of humanity. It would comprise of soldiers who were skilled not only in wielding the light, but also in leadership and the arts of traditional warfare. His students would become the first of the paladins, and the ones to step up first and embrace these new teachings. They were Turallion, Seidan Dafrohan, Uther, Gavinrad the Dire, and of course Tirion Fordring, a knight renowned for his zeal and resilience. The city of Stratholme would later serve as the paladins' base of operations. Yet for the time being, Lothar he kept them close, ordering them to travel alongside the main Alliance army. Day and night, the holy warriors were trained vigorously. Val taught them how to use the light to comfort their allies and smite their enemies, and also how to lead by example. They would be more than just weapons. No matter how dire the times would become, the paladins would serve as lights in the darkness, as beacons of hope to guide the Alliance. They were also instructed to live simple lives, to not seek fortune or glory in this war. Until the end of their days, they would put the needs of others above their own. As their training progressed, Val presented them with a set of enchanted librams. These holy tomes, they were some of the church's most ancient relics. Each libram represented what Val saw as a core trait of the Silver Hand: retribution, holiness, protection, justice and compassion. Each of them was given one of these tomes, Tirion holding the retribution one, challenging them to become living embodiments of what their holy tomes represented.
Justice demands retribution.
This ceremony of officially becoming a member that was guided by Val as well, who said as Tirion kneeled before him, "In the light we gather to empower our brother. In its grace he will be made anew. In its power he shall educate the masses. In its strength he shall combat the shadow. And in its wisdom he shall lead his brethren to the eternal rewards of paradise. Clerics of Northshire, if you deem this man worthy, place your blessings upon him." One of the white-robed men walked forward, carrying an embroidered dark blue stole in his hands. The cleric reached the dais and reverently placed the blessed stole around Tyrion's neck. He dipped his thumb in a small vial of sacred oil and anointed Tyrion's sweating brow. "By the grace of the light, may your brethren be healed," the cleric said in a whisper. He bowed and backed away to stand once more amongst his fellow. The archbishop turned to the men on the right and spoke again. "Knights of the Silver Hand, if you deem this man worthy, place your blessings upon him." Two of the armored men moved forward with obvious pride on their faces and stood solemnly in front of the dais. One of the men held a great two-handed warhammer. The hammer's silvery head was etched with holy runes, and its head was meticulously wrapped in blue leather. Tirion could only marvel at the weapon's exceptional craftsmanship and beauty. The knight laid the hammer on the dais before Tyrion's feet. He then lowered his head and backed away. The second knight, carrying dual ceremonial shoulder plates, stepped forward and looked Tirion in the eye. He was Seidan Dafrohan, one of Tyrion's closest friends. The knight's face was alight with pride and excitement, and Tirion smiled knowingly. Visibly composing himself, Satan placed the silver shoulder plates upon Tyrion's shoulders and spoke in a stern voice. By the strength of the light, may your enemies be undone. After he finished speaking, Satan adjusted the silver plates so that the blue stool streamed out from beneath them. He then backed away and returned to the group of attendant knights. Tyrion's heart, it pounded in his chest. He was so overcome with joy that he felt almost lightheaded. The archbishop strode forward once again and placed his hand upon Tyrion's head. "Arise and be recognized," he said, and Tirion got to his feet and marveled at the sheer magnitude of the honor being bestowed upon him. The archbishop leveled his gaze at Tirion, then read aloud from the book. "Do you, Tirion Fordring, vow to uphold the honor and codes of the Order of the Silver Hand?" "I do," Tirion replied earnestly. "Do you vow to walk in the grace of the light and spread its wisdom to your fellow man?" "I do." "Do you vow to vanquish evil wherever it be found and protect the weak and innocent with your very life?" Tirion swallowed hard and nodded while saying, "By my blood and honor, I do." He exhaled softly, overcome with emotion. The archbishop closed the book and walked back towards the center of the altar. Turning to face the entire assembly, the archbishop said, "Brothers, you who have gathered here to bear witness, raise your hands and let the light illuminate this man." Each of the clerics and knights raised their right hands and pointed towards Tirion. To Tyrion's amazement, their hands began to glow with a soft, golden radiance. He supposed that, in the excitement of the moment, his eyes were playing tricks on him. Yet as he watched in wonder, the sunlight that poured in from above began to move slowly across the floor, as if in response to the assembly's command. The light came to rest upon Tirion himself. Partially blinded by the intense radiance, Tirion felt his body warmed and energized by its holy power. Every fiber of his being was ignited by divine fire. He could sense life-giving energies flowing through his limbs, energies enough to heal any wounds or cure any disease. He mused that these energies were enough to burn even the souls of the accursed denizens of the shadow. Despite himself, he shuddered involuntarily. Ablaze with hope and joy, Tirion knelt down and took hold of the mighty hammer, the symbol of his holy appointment and station. With joyous tears streaming down his face, he raised his head and looked towards the archbishop, who smiled warmly back at him. "Arise, Tirion Fordring, paladin defender of Lordaeron. Welcome to the Order of the Silver Hand." The paladins finished their training successfully, and a good thing too, as the hordes, they'd also added a new kind of champion amongst their ranks. The Death Knights, created by Gul'dan. Their dark energies, it stunned the human army, inflicting pain and terror on their enemies. The mere sight of the Death Knights, it horrified the humans, and the Alliance lines began to crumble. This dark force, it might have been too much to handle, was it not for those shiny and holy paladins. With the light on their side, they struck down the reanimated human corpses, mended the wounds, and eased their fearful hearts. With the paladins at their side, and betrayal within the hordes, the Alliance of Lordaeron, it was eventually able to defeat the hordes, push them back through the dark portal, or make them hide away on the planets. Those orcs that had surrendered, they were placed within internment camps. And while the hordes, they would come back for the second invasion, the Alliance, they once again held its ground, and the alien orcish hordes, it did not conquer their worlds. Now this betrayal amongst the hordes, it might give an indication that not all were down with what's going on amongst their ranks. There was demon blood, there was fell magic, corruption by the Burning Legion. The orcs, they were not always these bloodthirsty monsters that came storming through the dark portal. Some of them, they decided that they had enough of the fighting and they just wanted to live out their days in peace. That would be orcs like Eitrigg. But that doesn't mean that the Alliance all of a sudden saw the orcs differently. To them, all orcs were vile and corrupt. Any found were to be imprisoned or executed on the spot. By this time, Tirion is around the age of 50 years old, and now the governor of the prosperous Alliance territory of Hearthglen, a large forested region nestled at the crossroads between the towering Alterac Mountains and the mist-shrouded shores of Darrowmere Lake. He was respected for his deeds amongst the Alliance, but also as a just governor, and his name and deeds, they were honored throughout the kingdom of Lordaeron. His great keep, Ner'zhul, it was the center of commerce and trade for the bustling region. the citizens of Hearthglen took great pride in the fact that the keep's mighty walls, it had never fallen to invaders, even during the darkest days of the Orcish invasion of Lordaeron. But reports are spreading about the horde reforming. This is around the time where Thrall had escaped from his internment camp and is indeed busy reforming the horde. Not to conquer the world as the horde of old, but instead to free his people from their imprisonment and carve out a piece of the land to call it home. But of course, the Alliance didn't know this, and reports of his actions, they were spreading like wildfire. So the Alliance, they were a bit on edge as it was, fearing another war, and wouldn't you know it, Tirion, he actually runs into Eitrigg, who's been hanging out in his lands, just minding his own business and staying out of sight. Naturally, the human and orc they fight, Tirion slicing Eitrigg's thigh, forcing him to the ground. Instead of pushing the attack and maybe take his life, Tirion, he backed off and slowly motioned for the creature to rise. The orc blinked in astonishment. Tirion, he was a paladin, a knight of the Silver Hands, and to him, butchering a fallen foe in the midst of single combat, it was unquestionably dishonorable. The holy code of his order demanded that he gives the orc a reprieve. They stood for a moment, facing each other with eyes locked. The orc straightened slightly and raised his clenched fist to his heart. A salute, Tirion realized. And now it was Tyrion's turn to blink in disbelief. Certainly, no savage orc had ever saluted him before. He conceded that perhaps there was more to the fierce creature than he would have guessed. Nevertheless, it was still his enemy. He nodded to the orc in understanding and raised his sword again. Their clash of steel, it became so intense that the building around him collapsed. Next thing Tirion knew was waking up 4 days later, back in his own bed, after they found him unconscious, tied up to his own horse. His wife Coranda told him that he'd been talking in his sleep, mumbling about an orc, and Tirion realized that he hadn't been dreaming or having a nightmare. He truly had faced this orc, but some way, somehow, the orc had not taken his life. Our paladin then goes back to where they had fought, and he finds Eitrigg again. To his surprise, the orc speaks his language, and the two veterans, they sit and talk about the history of the hordes, how Eitrigg had come to his lands, and how after a lifetime of fruitless war, peace is the only comfort that Eitrigg has left. This puts Tirion in quite a bit of a spot. On one hand, here's an orc, an enemy of the Alliance, a monster that he had fought against and defeated. On the other hand, Eitrigg had saved his life, opened his eyes that there was more to the orc than he had assumed, and perhaps most importantly, Eitrigg had shown him honor. This is something that means everything to Tirion. So he said, "As a warrior of honor, I accept your words, Eitrigg, and in return for having saved my life, I will allow you your solitude. So long as you remain hidden and leave my people unmolested, you may stay here for as long as you wish." Eitrigg smirked, not believing that Tyrion's brethren wouldn't hunt him down anyways. But Tirion, he is their lord, and they shall do as he says. I give you my solemn oath as a Lightsworn paladin that your secret will be safe. None shall hunt you, while I have the power to prevent it, Tirion vowed. Eitrigg grunted in satisfaction. On your honor, then. A vow that Tirion would soon enough regret, as back at the keep, news of the orcs in their lands, it had quickly spread, and none other than his longtime friend Saidan Dafrohan, Lord Commander of the Order, had showed up to investigate. Normally, he wouldn't step in and he would let Tirion handle it himself, but the rise of Thrall, it makes him look closely to any and all possible orcish incursions. He orders Tirion to lead them to where he had encountered the orc, and now Fordring, he is placed with an impossible choice, a choice between honor and duty, his vows as a paladin, his promises to the Alliance, his own core beliefs. He cannot ignore a direct order given, so he leads them to the spot. Eitrigg is actually still there, and they capture him. He tries to convince them to just let the orc go, that he's not hurting anyone, but to the rest of them, he seemingly lost his mind. Why is he standing up for a beast such as this? But when the guard starts whipping Eitrigg in his cage, Tirion, he loses it. He pushes the guard aside, takes the whip away from him. He lets him taste the lash himself. For the sake of his honor, he tries to free Eitrigg from his cage. And that's a step too far, even for Dafrohan. Labeled as a traitor to the Alliance, they imprison Tirion as well, and they place him on trial at Stratholme. His judge is Uther the Lightbringer, with 4 members of the jury, Lord Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, Archmage Antonidas, Archbishop Alonsus Val, and Prince Arthas Menethil. Not much of a court case, really. Tirion takes full responsibility for his actions. He tries to explain to them why he did what he did, how Eitric had saved his life, and that he's as honorable an opponent as he has ever faced. You must understand me when I tell you, in order to follow my orders, I would have had to betray my honor as a paladin. That I could not do. That said, I will accept any punishment you deem fit. For his long duty to the Alliance, they still offer him a chance, a full pardon. All he needs to do is disavow his oath to the creature and reaffirm his commitment to the Alliance, and all of this would be forgotten. He could just return home to his beloved wife and his son Talon. I will remain committed to the Alliance until my dying day. Of that, have no doubt, Tirion said confidently. But I cannot disavow the oath I took. To do so would be to betray everything I am and everything that we, as honorable men, hold dear. Rubbing his eyes wearily, Ulfred motioned for the court to fall silent once more. He was beside himself with anguish over what he had to do, but Tirion had stated his position clearly. So be it, Ulfred said ominously. Tirion Fordring, from this day forth you are no longer welcome amongst the Knights of the Silver Hand. You are no longer fit to bask in the grace of the light. I hereby excommunicate you from our ranks. The audience gasped at Ulfred's words. Excommunication was a rare, harsh punishment that stripped a paladin of his light-given powers. Though it had only been used a few times, every paladin lived in mortal fear of it. Tirion could not fathom what was about to happen. Before he could utter another word, Ulfr had made a sweeping motion with his hands. Immediately, Tirion felt a dark shadow pass over him, choking out the holy powers of the light. Panic threatened to overwhelm him as the grace and strengthening energies of the light fled his body. The blessed energies, which had been such an integral part of him for so long, ebbed away, just as if they had never been. Though the light of the hall never wavered, Tirion felt as if he'd been wrapped in darkness and cast down into oblivion, unable to withstand the rage and despair and hopelessness that washed over him in waves. He lowered his head in abject despair. Ulfr continued. All trappings of our order will be stripped from you, he said, as two paladins came forward and viciously ripped the silver plates from Tyrion's wrecked body, as well as your personal titles and holdings. Tirion struggled against despair. Never in his life had he felt so naked and powerless. Images of Talon and Karandra sifted through his tortured mind. He had to get a grip on himself. He had to think of his dignity. On wobbly legs, he stood and faced the court once more. You shall be exiled from these kingdoms and live the rest of your days amongst the wild things of the world. May the light have mercy on your soul, Ulfr finished. The crime was Tyrion's, so his family did not share his punishment, while Karanda told him that, while she had remained at his side through all these years, this time the price of his honor, it was simply too much. She and Talon were going to stay in Hearthglen, and Tirion felt as if his life no longer had any meaning. Losing the light, it was devastating enough. He didn't know if he could bear losing them as well. Before his exile began, the paladin spent his night writing his son a letter, placing it under his pillow for when the day came that he was old enough to perhaps understand why he did what he did. Perhaps somehow he'll look back on his father's deeds and be proud. That still left Eitric in the custody of the Alliance. Tirion knew that they had tormented him to gather information, and they were now ready to move on to execution. Without the light at his side, he had to find some way to save the orc from the gallows. And he did, just as Thrall and the Horde marched upon Stratholme. This gave Tirion the opportunity to drag Eitric out of the city, but the injuries that he had suffered, they were so great that the orc's heart had stopped. Desperately, Tirion called out to the light. By the grace of the light, may your brethren be healed. The phrase wafted through his mind repeatedly as he reached deep for the power that lurked somewhere within his spirit. In its grace, he will be made anew. The light could not be taken from him, he insisted. Men could strip him of his armor and titles. They could take away his home and his wealth, but the light, it would always be within him. It had to be. Slowly, Tirion felt a searing heat rising within his body. It filled his center with strength and light that snaked out towards his limbs. He almost cried out in joy as the familiar energies raced through his hands and engulfed the orc's ravaged body. The paladin felt as if he were floating on air. The strength and purity of the light flooded his being and cascaded out through his body like a halo of holy fire. Awed and humbled by the reawakened power, Tirion opened his eyes and saw that a warm, golden glow had enveloped Eitrigg. He watched in amazement as the bruises on the orc's body healed before his very eyes. Even the infection on the orc's leg sealed up as if it never been. The soothing energy subsided, and Tirion dropped to the ground in exhaustion. He'd been right. Uther was not able to rip his connection from the light. And lore-wise, as far as I know, there's only been one instance where that has actually happened. We'll talk about that moment real soon. And here we see the light responding to Tyrion's conviction. Eitrigg's life is saved by the paladin. His honor and vow are intact. To which Thrall shows up. The Horde were actually here to pick up Eitrigg, add the legendary orc to their ranks. The warchief of the Horde, he makes sure that his warriors do not harm Tirion. And before he leaves, Eitrigg turns around and tells Tirion, "We are both bound by blood and honor, brother. I will not forget you." Sadly, Eitrigg and Tirion, they never really had a whole lot of moments or story in-game together. But of course, exile would not be the end of Tirion Fordring's story. While living in the wilds, Azeroth it kept on turning. Dark schemes from the cold lands of Northrend. They placed young Prince Arthur's Menethil on a road to damnation, guided by the invisible hands of the Lich King. We saw Kel'Thuzad spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron. This was a plague designed to not only kill its citizens, but also turn them into the undead scourge. Arthas became so zealous in his mission that he picked up the cursed Runeblade Frostmourne, which did give him his vengeance. He did get the kill that he desired, but it also cost him a piece of his soul, and now is serving the very thing that he had fought against. Back in Lordaeron, he murdered his own father, and the scourge spread out across the land. Kel'Thuzad, he was resurrected as a lich, and great heroes like Uther the Lightbringer or Gavinrad the Dire, they fell to this darkness. But not all hope was lost. We also saw great heroes rise up amongst the darkness. Heroes like Alexandros Mograine and his mighty blade the Ashbringer. The undead scourge that faced him on the battlefield, they literally turned to ash as Alexandros cleaved them down. A great threat to the scourge that had to be taken care of. And once more, manipulations would do the trick. As Said and Dafruhan, Mograine and others, they charged into Strathholm to cleanse it of the undead filth. Their party got separated from each other, and Dafruhan was cornered by the Dreadlord Balnazar. After slaying the paladin and taking over his body, he then started to manipulate events from within their order, like pitching Renaud Mograine against his father, motivating him to lead him into a trap and then murder him with his very own weapon. This action corrupted the Holy Blade, and even more horrible, Alexandros' body was taken by Kel'Thuzad, twisting and torturing it until all that remained was the Death Knight Mograine, one of the 4 horsemen wielding that corrupted Ashbringer. In the meantime, those still holding their grounds against the scourge, they were not doing so well. They found out about Alexandros' death, and Balnazar, he kept on corrupting them from within. While some wanted to recruit help from different races to fight against the scourge, others believed that the organization should remain pure. In light of this, some of the members decided to split up, whereas the Scarlet Crusade, they received Renaud Mograine as their first commander, placed there by Balnazar in disguise. Others, they formed the organization known as the Argent Dawn, and thankfully, Mograine, he had another son, the youngest, Darion, who teamed up with the Argent Dawn. He found out about his father, he entered Naxxramas, and he took him out. This act did indeed stop his father's physical form, but his spirit, it was still bound to the corrupted blade, and would know no rest. From the weapon, his father whispered to Darion to take him to Renaud. From the blade there rose his spirit, claiming delicious vengeance for what his son had done. The youngest of the Mograine family, he couldn't believe what had happened to his father, but the scourge was still gathering more and more forces, and they were getting ready to assault Light's Hope Chapel. In a dream, Darion was told to seek out Tirion if he wanted to find a way to save his father's soul. Tirion by now, he spent a fair few years in exile, watching his son grow up from a distance, and at first he had no desire to listen to Darion, but he changed his mind when Darion tells him that his father's soul is at stake. The entire tale seems disturbing and unbelievable, But Tirion can sense that his soul is indeed trapped within the blade, and he tells Darion that if there's anything that might undo the corruption, it would be an act of love greater than the act of evil that corrupted the sword. Such an act is often the ultimate test of faith. And with this knowledge in his mind, Darion makes his way back to the Argent Dawn, but before he leaves, he asks Tirion to come back. He was once a vessel of the light, with faith, wisdom, valor, and honor. Tirion was once a paladin and an inspiration. He could be a hero once more, but the decision is for Tirion to make. Back at Light's Hope, Darion finds out that a massive Scourge army is making its way to the chapel. Beneath it, the Order has relocated 1,000 of the bravest souls from warriors, priests, paladins, champions of battles long past. They were all moved beneath the chapel to keep them away from the Scourge, to keep them away from being turned into their enemy. Kel'Thuzad and the Scourge, they know this. That is exactly why they want to take the chapel. And the Argent Dawn, they get ready to lay down their lives to defend their holy place. A massive battle erupts, one that not even Tirion showing up can actually be turned around. Darion realizes what it is that he has to do, a strong act of love, the ultimate test of faith. His father had died due to betrayal. The only act that could free him was to make the ultimate sacrifice. And if Darion could free him, then perhaps Alexandros Mograine could save the Argent Dawn from annihilation. He took the corrupted Ashbringer and decided to impale himself upon it. Luckily, his path of reasoning was right, as this selfless act it did more than just free his father. The souls interred beneath the chapel were also awakened. Alongside Alexandros, their vengeful fury, it laid waste to the invading Scourge. Light's Hope was indeed saved that day, but many had fallen to defend it. Some, including Darion, were recovered by the Scourge. Though he had saved his father's soul, he had now damned his own. Both Darion Mograine and the Ashbringer were now in the Scourge's hands. A new wielder for that corrupted blade. Someone that would make a return real soon. But first, Tirion, he has his own son to worry about. That part of the story, and so much more, we're going to save for next week. So for now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. You can subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!